Hello and welcome. My name is Boryana and I will be hosting this conversation for the next 30 minutes. As usual, it is Friday and we are here to chat, learn and take action from very special change makers. And today we have two of them. But before I go ahead and I tell you who they are, let me quickly tell you about the Legacy Changemaker. Legacy Changemaker is a weekly broadcast. We aspire to bring to you people or change makers who are living to leave a legacy behind. And we would like to connect them, we would like to inspire them, and we would like them to inspire you to work towards a more peaceful, prosperous, hopeful, and people and planet-centered world. So this is why we do what we do. And having said that, let me turn to our guests. Today, we have two very special ladies. And I don't know what it is with ladies, but it seems like there are more women than men for the time being featured and being celebrated. So today we have two very special women and two very special catalysts. Their names are Julia Bodin and Boryana Milova. Boryana Milova. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, very quickly, would you mind introducing yourself in one sentence? Julia, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Julia, based in Basel, originally French, and I work on waste reduction and circular economy.
That's right, and you have a degree from EPFL, where you have done environmental engineering and science, right? And you
Correct.
have done a master's in Israel around coral reefs.
That is correct, and I think that's a story for later in our talk.
That's right. So welcome, Julia.
Thank
What
you
about
for
you,
having me.
Boryana?
Hello, everyone. I'm Boryana, based in St. Gallen, originally Bulgarian, and coming from a business background. So studied at the University of St. Gallen and focused on purpose-driven business and new alternative economic models.
Yes, thank you very much to both of you. And as you know, dear audience, you can ask questions and give comments every single moment of this broadcast. We will be able to see them, show them to everybody, and of course, our speakers or our change makers or our catalysts are going to answer them. So do not shy away from asking your questions or sharing any comments. And as we all know, today's conversation is going to focus around the future of waste. So let's start simple. What is waste?
I think that's a very good starting point and a very good question to start with, because we chose to use waste as the tangible entry point to our topic, which is circular economy. Circular economy can be a rather complex and scary concept, but waste is something very tangible. Unlike climate change and ocean acidification, the problem of waste is something that we can see with our own eyes, and it is something that we have everywhere in our kitchen, under our desk. It is really something that we produce in a very physical manner. And it turns out, and in Switzerland in particular, waste is something that people are willing to talk about because there's so much hype and talk about recycling and properly managing our waste that it is really something that we can easily open the discussion with. And we use waste as a way of talking about how we can design products better, so that waste actually becomes non-existent.
What is also really interesting about waste is that in general, people agree that waste is not something nice that we want to have around next to us. So looking at waste from the side of not something that we throw away, but actually something that is mismanaged resources is the way that we're seeing it. And waste in that sense is wasteful. So at an earth that has limited resources, mismanaging and throwing away resources is wasteful.
Thank you so much. On your website, you do make the claim that waste is a failure of design. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
As a person who's worked a bit in biology and has studied biomimicry, I've noticed something very important when you look at the animal kingdom. There is no species on the planet that produces waste. Everything that is produced by one species becomes food or resource for something, for building, for feeding or whatnot for another species. And humankind is the only species on this planet that actually creates stuff at the end of their use cycle that does not have a use, that does not have a function, and that we actually have to manage. So we say that that waste is a failure of design because we believe that if we think about the products, when we design them in the way that at the end of their life they can be reused in a way or another and recovered in one way or another, then we would be much better off in the long run.
Amazing. And Boryana, can you tell us a little bit about this image that you shared with me earlier?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this image is just showcasing precisely what Julia was mentioning. In the forest, for example, if a tree falls down, then it is not wasted, but it actually becomes a very fruitful ground for all the living organisms, insects, and other organisms, and that basically that tree becomes food for the other living beings.
Thank you so much. So let's turn to the key question. What is the future of waste?
So the Future of Waste is also the name of our project, Future of Waste, which we've decided to create and found in February this year. It was an idea that was being born and emerging for a while now in both our heads. Future Waste is many things, but one of the things that it definitely is about gathering stakeholders that have an influence on the circular economy transition and gathering them around a table and connecting them in a way that they really connect humanly. Why? Because a lot of circular economy projects and actions taking place in Switzerland and outside of Switzerland often focus on the professional side of a person. So I'm the politician XYZ, I am the representative of this party, or I am the CEO of this or that business. And people come to the table with these stakes and with these positions that they need to stay in. What we want to achieve is a human connection. So we want to achieve that somehow they leave that professional hat at the entrance and come in with their personal values, personal convictions, and manage to connect on these values. Why do we do that? Because circular economy has a few keywords, but one of the most important keyword is collaboration. We cannot do circular economy in a compartmented, siloed manner. All industries and stakeholders and people that are influenced and influencing circular economy have to come together in order to find all the solutions that we need to find in order to be able to move forward with this transition. Boryana, would you like maybe to add more specifically how we do that?
I would like to add on a little bit around the term of future of waste, and namely that there is no one single defined future of waste. So what we're hoping for is to see waste indeed in a different manner, so to reshape the meaning of the term and start seeing waste as resources. But ultimately, in that process that we are taking on, it is up to each individual community and the deeper dialogues that the stakeholders are having on basis of the needs of the local ecosystem that would define what precisely the future of waste is and how would they potentially transition towards a more aligned with nature and with human beings way of operating.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting. And as far as I understand, through those dialogues, through catalyzing and holding the space for this togetherness, let me call it togetherness, you're trying to achieve the change. What is the change you're trying to achieve?
I think the main one is mindset shift, I would say, because a lot of the members and the actors in the ecosystem at the moment are often stuck in the notion that doing sustainable things, be it circular economy or climate change or other topics, is usually a punishment. So, like you have laws that tell you have to reduce this and reduce that. And you have as a private individual, you have tax bags to throw away your waste and things like that. And so environmental actions, more often than not right now, are perceived as a negative punishment thing. And this needs to shift. And we need people to understand that circular economy is not a punishment, but rather a way to be able to thrive in the future, and a way to ensure that the future generations coming after us will be able to continue to thrive after we're gone.
And on the side of how we get there, speaking of mindset shift, in this process that we have taken on with the project, it is fascinating to look at the different depths of a challenge. So more often than not, what we see today is that we have a lot of band-aid solutions to sustainability problems. So we see the symptoms, we see waste on the street, and then we send someone to pick it up, which works at a certain level, but it's not stopping the problem at its root cause.
Is this what you're talking about?
Precisely. So here we can see the Iceberg model with which we're working very closely, and we only see the symptoms above the water of the iceberg. But once we start diving deeper into what kind of structures are creating those symptoms, and even further down, what kind of paradigms of thought and mindset are creating the system in which we're living today, that's where we can actually tackle the problem with the root cause and shift the whole system for the better for everyone, and not only the selected few. And in order to achieve that, we are creating these dialogues with the local ecosystem to really see all the different stakeholders across the ecosystem, to hear the voices that are normally not heard, and seek ways to collaborate together.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, no, if I can just add, what's really interesting with this Iceberg model is that we explore it on a group level, so on the ecosystem level together, but we also explore it on the individual level, which is the inner work that we also get to do in a process like this. Sometimes, you have a very strong position about a topic, but you're not quite sure why. And by exploring deep down what is feeding this belief and this position, you are sometimes able to overcome a certain stock position and to actually open your mind and open your heart to another way of seeing things. So it's a deep exploration of both the collective but also of yourself, so each of the individuals that will be present in the room.
You said something really beautiful, and it is a deep exploration of your mind and of your heart as well. So can you please, both of you, give us an example of how did you shift your own mind and maybe your own heart? Who would like to start?
Go ahead, Boryana.
It is a very beautiful question indeed. And what I'm thinking of is, first of all, the very first moment when I even started looking at the theme of waste and it opened my eyes, basically, was when I was at high school. I'm originally from Bulgaria, so back then there was this challenge with waste, with a big amount of waste being imported and moved from one place to the other, where basically it ended up right at the backyard of where I used to live. So I could really see for the first time, very tangibly in front of my eyes, those piles, mountains of waste, just growing and growing continuously, which made me question how are we actually doing things. And for the very first time, I asked myself, okay, what happens once I throw away something? That was the very first piece. But if we speak about really mindset shift and opening heart shift, I would like to bring in the Catalyst Lab by Collaboratio Helvetica, where Julia and I met last year. So the Catalyst Lab is this several month process and journey for catalysts and change makers who are working towards the SDGs. And there we have different modules which we spend together, and the host could create this very safe space where we had also the reflection space to question also our own mindset and also our own behaviors. And what's really fascinating is that when we speak about systemic change, we have grown up in this very same system which we are aiming to shift, which means that a lot of the behaviors that we see in the system we can see in ourselves. And during the Catalyst Lab journey, after several months of reflection and different tools and exercises that we had in the collective, but also individually, there was this module of crystallization, literally in the beginning of the journey. And in that module, it somehow directly everything made sense. Like the connection between the natural world, the human world, all the sentient beings world, all that connection made sense. All the connections of the different catalyst projects, seemingly very different, but actually looking at a very similar root cause, also made sense. And that was the moment when I realized, okay, it is my calling to become that catalyst. And also the moment when Julie and I realized it was the right thing to join forces and work on this project together.
Thank you for sharing this very personal story. Thank you.
Yeah, Boryana is correct. This is where we met, and this is really how we realized that it was so much more coherent and right for us to work together. It was in February this year during the crystallizing model. But when it comes to me personally, and we touched on this at the beginning of this discussion, I studied environmental engineering and sciences at EPFL in Lausanne. And I was always drawn to the ocean one way or another, but I wasn't too sure how that was going to come into my life. And then it was very almost by accident. I mean, it was such a last minute thing. My master's project turned out to be a project on coral reef. And I was looking at their resilience to climate change and ocean acidification. And for this project, I traveled to Israel, where I was working in a collaboration with another university there. And of course, for this project, I had to spend a lot of time underwater. I hadn't really dived before, so I learned to dive when I was there. And I discovered a world which we know so little about. The underwater, the marine environment is extremely rich. There's a lot of biodiversity, a lot of various symbiosis and ways in which each and every animal and block of this world work together and help each other out. Sometimes not so much, but most of the time it's helpful and supporting each other. And I was absolutely blown away by the complexity and the beauty of this environment. I was also absolutely blown away by the amount and the variety of pressures that human beings are putting on this very precious environment. So you have global pressures like, of course, climate change and ocean acidification, and then you have local pollutions like chemical leaks, sediments being carried from the river that are coming into the water. But the one that really struck me was plastic pollution. Plastic pollution was everywhere, of course, but it was particularly striking after a week of holiday when everyone was at the beach and then everyone left. And for weeks and weeks after this, we kept collecting plastic again and again and again. So when I came back from this master's project, I realized that one way or another, I would have to address this issue. I did 1 year of research on plastic and microplastics in the water column, trying to explore how this affects the little creatures at the bottom of the food chain, and also trying to see and explain how pollutants can potentially be carried and accumulated in those small plastic particles and affect the organisms at the bottom of the food chain. But I stepped away from research, and then in 2019 I had a very strong experience. I went I went into a women's leadership program for environment, and we spent 1 week on a sailboat. The goal of this week was to travel from port to port with as minimum pollution as possible, because we were sailing, and to talk about environmental related issues to children and adults in these ports through a various set of activities. And when we were crossing from France to Corsica, We were in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no soil to be visible anywhere in our field of vision. And then at some point, the two boats completely accidentally met in one place, and that was also the place where we saw two whales, actually several whales. One of them was giving birth to a small whale, to a baby whale, and it was such a moment of just humble. We were just there to observe the beauty of nature coming into reality, and the beauty of this environment, which is so strong and so fragile. And that really touched me deep down, and really again convinced me that working on these issues was something I would have, working on anything that affects the ocean was going to be something I would have to address in my work. And then in 2020, I started the Catalyst Lab. I met Boryana, and you know the rest of the story.
Thank you so much for sharing this emotional story. It brought tears into my eyes, because I think it just touched me. Thank you. I would really like to know, now that you have set on such a long journey with such an ambitious goal, what are the challenges that you face?
Yeah, go ahead, Boryana.
There, as every journey, there's many challenges ahead. And one thing I can think of specifically is actually communicating what are we aiming to do, and communicating across the different stakeholders. So if we speak about multi-stakeholder processes, then automatically just even the language that we need to use is different. So sometimes we need to use more numbers and shorter sentences. Other times we need to explain the whole context and process, for example, with academia. But adapting the language of an experience practically, because what we are trying to create is this safe space and experiential learning as well, is a challenge. It is a challenge. So adapting it in a way that people would understand what is the different in the social innovation process that we're taking on.
And of course, what's in it for them, right? Because if you want to bring them on board, and if you want them to own the solution they're going to co-create, they need to understand what's in it for them.
Absolutely. And I've had a lot of various experiences through the different discussions that we've had with various profiles of people in various environments. And one of them, I remember very specifically, we started the conversation online because of pandemic and everything. We started the conversation online, and that person had her camera off. And she explained to me that this was like a business thing, that they were turning cameras off because they didn't want to consume so much energy. And I was like, well, that's great, but I think we need to see each other so that we can connect. And she turned on her camera. And the first thing I see, of course, is her beautiful smile, but also on both sides of her, she had underwater pictures. And I was like, oh, I see you have like underwater coral pictures. Can you tell me about this? And she explained that she's a diver and everything. And immediately, because we were able to connect on that very personal level, we had that diving and love of underwater life together, then everything I explained to her was immediately understandable and comprehensive for her, because she knew I was working in the same direction to protect the same thing that she loves. And that was very interesting, because I came into this conversation having a plan and having, like, this is what I'm going to tell her. And then I see these two pictures and I'm like, this is not the way I should go about it. I should actually go with the very personal approach. And it really worked. So I would say being agile and being observant of what's happening and what's moving in you and in the other person is a very good way to be able to adapt and use the right language.
Thank you so much. And of course, this is why you said you want to bring people and you want to help them connect at a very human to human level, because this is what brings us together. Okay, so given what you've done thus far, what have you achieved?
We're still at an early phase of the Future of Waste initiative. But what we have been doing so far is having a lot of conversations with different stakeholders across the whole waste generation ecosystem in different locations in Switzerland. And our aim would be to start with one prototype of such a process in a concrete location. So far, one specific location looks most promising, and there we have been having very positive conversations both with partners and with potential stakeholders. So there's been a lot of learning already, and some very positive first marks, and the next step would be to actually define that location for the prototypical project.
Thank you. I would like to bring in this comment that we got on LinkedIn. Collins, he's really excited about the topic. He's researching it. And he's looking into the food circularity in the food system. So maybe Colin would be one person you can connect and potentially work together. Thank you very much, Collins, for your comment. And thank you, Boryana, for sharing with us what are you currently working on. Now, this broadcast wants to give some really practical tips and tricks. What can our audience do today to help the ocean life and addressing the root cause? What would you tell them to do or invite them to do?
So we've talked about plastic pollution, and we've talked also about mindset shifts. And I think a lot of that starts by just noticing and understanding what we actually are doing on a daily basis. And so what I would invite your audience to do is actually to take a mental note for like the whole day tomorrow, for example. Take a mental note of every item, single-use items that they're using. Let me explain what a single-use item is. Typically, you go to the bakery in the morning, you get a croissant, and that comes into a paper bag. And that paper bag, you're going to throw it away right away. That's a single-use item. Then you go to grab a to-go coffee, and you get a to-go cup, which is also going to be thrown away. And just realizing and taking a mental note on all of these objects that we are touching and using on a daily basis and then throwing away after a couple of minutes or after just a few hours is a very good step to understanding and realizing the effect that we have. And then what they could do, having, kind of looked into and taken a mental note with all these objects, is just to explore what are those items that could be replaced by something reusable. Typically, I use a reusable water bottle, which I can also use to take away tea and coffee because it's insulated. That's a very easy one. But then there's so many other options, and I don't want to give them all. I just want your audience to think about what it is that they would feel comfortable replacing in their daily life.
This is what I love about your initiative, that you do not want to give ready-made answers. You want to help people discover their own answers and design their own future, even the future of waste. So thank you so much. Boryana, would you like to add anything?
I would like to add on, for the ones who are really interested in diving in that journey of being a catalyst or being a change maker, I would like to highlight again the Catalyst Lab from Collaboratio Helvetica, which is this absolutely incredible opportunity to, on the one hand side, learn what it actually means to be a catalyst, but it also gives the tools to really do so and act as a catalyst in your local ecosystem. So as a call to action to your audience, check it out. And if you want to bring around such a process in your local community, then you can either check out the Catalyst Lab or also get in touch with us. We'll be really interested to learn more.
Yes, and as you told me yesterday, the Catalyst Lab is having another call. How would you call this? They're bringing people together to educate them how to become catalysts, right?
Yeah, so there is a next cohort call open until the end of the month.
Okay, so this is, dear viewers, this is what you're seeing. I'm going to post this on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on YouTube, I'm sorry. So if you are interested in becoming a catalyst for the and being part of Collaboratio Helvetica, please do that. And what is your last call to action?
What else did we have to say? We mentioned the Catalyst Lab, but definitely the future of waste is about repeating different initiatives in different locations. We have the possibility of doing that in the French-speaking parts of Switzerland as well as in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. And our intention, our vision of the future is really to multiply these initiatives in as many places as possible. So if you feel that your area and your location is ready and is ripe for such a transition into circular economy, then you should definitely reach out to us and we can explore together. We would also love to see other change makers come to us, change makers that want to work in a similar direction, and maybe we can help each other out, work in that direction together, and create a future of waste initiative in your area.
We have a question from Collins again. Let me bring it in. And Collins said, a question to the speakers. Should we focus on tackling the sources of waste or dealing with the waste? Is there anything you are going to actually reduce the sources of plastic?
Yeah. That's an excellent question, and we couldn't stress enough how important it is to address the problem at the root cause, because most of what the initiatives are doing right now and most of the investment is going into how can we better recycle this thing, how can we better manage this thing. And to be honest, it's like if you were in your bathroom and you had your sink was overflowing, would you start mopping the floor or would you cut the tap first? Obviously and intuitively you would cut the tap first. So it is so important for us that we start by addressing how we get to the waste situation before we actually handle the waste situation. So this is what we mean by upstream innovation, and this is what we mean by waste is a failure of design, is that it needs to start really early in the product's life before it gets to the problem of being a waste that we cannot deal with.
Thank you
to the
so
question,
much.
What we are doing actually to reduce the sources of plastic waste, so the second part of the question, precisely these multi-stakeholder dialogues and processes which we're starting are aiming at that. Because with plastic, it is the same setup as with the bathtub example that Julie gave, it's just at a global scale, and then all the connections are more difficult to see. So in order to be able to see that across the ecosystem, we're bringing all the stakeholders together so that they can map that out and see precisely the challenge and hopefully shift together in a collaborative manner and stop the tap.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you so much, Boryana. It has been a real pleasure talking to you. I want to wish you all the best with all the future initiatives that you're going to bring and with all the sessions that you're going to have on letting communities, regions, cities, and even maybe countries define and co-create the future of their own ways, while really questioning what is it that makes sense. So once again, thank you so much. It has been a real pleasure chatting to you. Have a lovely weekend and best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, Boryana, and the same to you and your audience.
Thank you so much for having us, and wishing you a wonderful weekend, Boryana, and the whole audience.
Thank you. So, dear audience, thank you for being with us. I hope you understood what you can do, and I hope you choose what to do. I wish you a lovely weekend. See you next Friday.